Welcome back everyone to more NASCAR Heat 3 coverage here at Knee Pit Gaming. Today's setup video is all about the dirt track at Drebin Motor Speedway, the fantasy dirt track that is new this year in NASCAR Heat 3 as part of the Xtreme Dirt Late Model Tour that they've added to the game. Drebin is a little bit different from a couple of the other dirt tracks that we've looked at so far and done setups for, in that it is a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter. Now it's pretty flat around the bottom of the track, but as you move your way out toward the outside wall, the banking does increase, giving you plenty of options. If you haven't had a chance, go ahead and check out the gameplay footage of 25 laps with me at Drebin Motor Speedway against the maximum difficulty AI. I uploaded that just a little bit earlier today, so go ahead and check that out. If you haven't, gives you an idea of some of the lines that you can run around the track, some of the speeds, the way the AI behaves, that sort of thing. Also, be sure to check out the setup that I did recently for the Charlotte dirt track, because you're going to see a lot of similarities with that track and Drebin. So we're going to be taking a look at some lap times. We're going to be taking a look at the setup itself. So let's get to it. Before we get into the setup discussion itself, let's take a quick look at some lap times. My quicker lap times, as you can see from the gameplay video, I believe my quickest lap time is around 13.3, somewhere in that range, but most of the laps are probably going to be 13.4s or 13.5s. If you can ever get some clean track, you'll spend most of your time here at this track running around the AI in a lot of congestion. The AI do like to run 2, in some cases 3 wide, but they do leave the bottom open for you. So if you can hang the bottom, and that's really what this setup is designed for, if you can hang the bottom through the corners, then you should have no issues with them. We'll start our setup discussion with the shock settings. The 3 on bump, 5 on rebound works great. That is by no means the only option you have for the springs that will work, but it's simply what works for me and gives me the feel that I'm looking for. If you want a little bit quicker transitions, maybe a little bit rougher ride on the dirt tracks with all the bumps and so on, then simply increase those numbers and see how you like it. Weight settings. Left side weight is maxed out. The front weight and wedge are identical to what I used at Charlotte, and I reference Charlotte simply because it's a similar style of track, and I want a similar feel because I really liked the feel that I had at the Charlotte dirt track, so that's why I make reference to it. So nose weight and wedge are identical to what I used there. Moving on to the spring settings. The front springs, 280 and 240, using a little bit softer right front spring will help the car turn a little bit better on entry. So if you're getting loose on entry, then one of your options is to simply increase the right front spring, and that will tighten up the entry. At the rear, we have 240 pounds in the left rear, 260 in the right rear, only 20 pounds of rear spring split here. I'm using a little bit less split in the rear springs simply because I want the car to be tighter under throttle. And overall, increasing or decreasing both rear springs together will help determine how much the rear of the car is really driving the car and how much input you get from it. So if you reduce both rear springs together and keep that 20-pound rear spring split, then you'll simply have the front of the car doing more of the work, and the car will be a little bit tighter, a little bit more stable. If you increase both rear springs, then that's where you're going to get the rear of the car wanting to rotate more and wanting to drive the car more, and you'll tend to be looser doing that. Moving on to the tires, 22 to 23 pounds on the left sides and maximum 30 pounds on the right side is working great for me. Miscellaneous settings, maximum camber on left front and right front. Front sway bar at 1.1 inches, which is one of the lowest settings that you can get without going to no front sway bar. But we need the front sway bar to give us some stability in the front of the car and help control how much the car rolls over in the corners. If you are too loose with the car, then one of the options that you have is to increase that front sway bar, and that will definitely tighten it up, particularly on the entry to the corner. The track bar here is a little bit lower than what I used at Charlotte because I don't need the car to turn quite as much as I did at Charlotte, just based on the shape of the track, the banking, and so on. So we're at 13.5 inches for the track bar. If you want the car to rotate more, particularly from the center off, then you'll want to increase the track bar. And if the car is simply too loose for you and over rotating, then one of the things you can do is lower that track bar. Brake bias, as I've mentioned before, anywhere from 45 to 55% seems to work pretty good. I don't really have much need to use the brakes. You can actually run this track wide open if you want to. I generally don't, simply for the control aspect of it. It doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of difference on speed. So I'll take the handling over the raw speed, and I generally don't. I lift a little bit on corner entry, let the car rotate, and then I get back hard into the throttle. But again, if you master getting the car to rotate on entry without lifting, then you can certainly run this and really any of the dirt tracks wide open in the game. The wheel lock, I'm using 10 degrees here. Anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees is what I use on the dirt tracks, typically 10 degrees on the asphalt tracks. And that simply has to do with how quick the steering is. The higher the wheel lock, the quicker the steering will be. So if you want the car to turn really quickly, then increase that wheel lock and that will do so. And of course the opposite is also true. Lowering the wheel lock will make for slower steering. The steering offset, I gave it just a little bit at 0.05, just to offset a little bit of the pull to the left from using max camber in the front. Moving finally on to the gear settings. We only have 2 gears in these cars, so you can ignore 3rd and 4th gear, but really all I'm concerned about is the rear end ratio. Unless you're at a road course, the 1st gear is not really going to matter a whole lot. But rear end ratio at 4.86 is a pretty good number for me, but of course there is plenty of room to adjust that to your liking. Generally going up and increasing that rear end ratio number will make the car a little bit looser under throttle as you're turning more RPMs. Decrease that number makes it a little bit more snug or tighter under throttle as you're running fewer in RPMs and trying to spin the rear wheel. So play around with that. It's just another setup tool for you to use and make the car feel the way you want it to feel. Thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully this has helped you out a little bit. And stay tuned for more NASCAR Heat 3 coverage here at Knee Pit Gaming.